children, welcome to your online English class. In today's class, let's see an interesting story from your Honeycomb English book. The name of the story is Quality. What do you love doing? Is there something you like so much and you can do that for the rest of your life without caring for rewards? However, a German shoemaker, Mr. Gessler, only made high-quality boots for men throughout his life. He made only little money out of his occupation. We would expect such person to hate his occupation. The story we are going to discuss today is written by John Galsworthy. He was born in Surrey, England in 1867.
He was an English novelist and playwright who wrote books like The Forty Saga, A Modern Comedy, and End of the Chapter. He was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in 1932.
We will now start with our story for today, which is named Quality.
The narrator of the story introduces us to the shoemaker, Mr. Gessler. He greatly admires Mr. Gessler's skill of making high-quality boots, which fits his customers perfectly. Mr. Gessler calls the work of shoemaking an art. Mr. Gessler runs the shop called Gessler Brothers and lives there with his elder brother. The shop is situated in a small by-street in a fashionable part of London.
The narrator does not have to visit Mr. Gessler's shop very often. That is because the shoes he makes are very strong and sturdy. It does not tear that easily.
The narrator tells us how Mr. Gessler greets him every time he visits his shop. Mr. Gessler appears before the narrator wearing slippers, a leather apron, and a shirt with his sleeves rolled backwards. He is a little bent. He does not wear a coat and looks like he has just woke up from a dream of boots.
From the narrator description, it is very clear that Mr. Gessler is very dedicated to his occupation. He could think of nothing but only making perfect shoes. His back is bent. That is because he spent years bending over making boots. He has not profited much from his occupation. He probably does not have enough money to buy a coat for himself.
The narrator usually asks for a pair of Russian leather boots when he goes to Mr. Gessler's shop. Mr. Gessler proudly and affectionately shows him the beautiful gold brown leather when he takes his order. Then they greet each other good morning, and Mr. Gessler disappears inside his shop, still looking at the leather in his hand.
It is very clear that the shoemaker loves his art much more than the customer. He pleases his customer with his work, not by his courtesies.
The narrator once tells Mr. Gessler that the boots he had bought from him had creaked. Mr. Gessler cannot believe him at first and thinks that the narrator must have got the boots wet, so they had creaked. When the narrator denies having wetted the boots, Mr. Gessler asks him to return the boots to him. He will try to fix them, and if they are beyond repair, he will return the money for the boots.
Mr. Gessler's confidence in his art and his work ethics are really commendable.
We know that Mr. Gessler is a man of very few words. Only once he speaks for a long time with the narrator. The narrator forgetfully goes to Mr. Gessler's shop wearing shoes bought during an emergency from a large firm. Mr. Gessler immediately notices that they are not his boots. He is bitterly disappointed and tells the narrator of the difficulties and struggles of his life and his trade. The narrator feels so sorry for Mr. Jessler that he orders many pairs of boots that day. He wears those boots for almost 2 years. On his next visit to the shop, the narrator learns that Mr. Jessler's elder brother has passed away. He is shocked and sorry for the old and lonely shoemaker. He again ordered many pairs of boots.
The big firms make huge profit by selling low quality boots. They are reducing the importance and demand of the old shoemakers. The firms earn all the money through advertisements, whereas the shoemakers like Mr. Jessler have to struggle throughout their lives even though they are dedicated and honest. The boots are of exceptional quality. The narrator wears them for a long time, for over a year.
He goes to Mr. Jessler's shop again after returning from his foreign trip. He is shocked to see that Mr. Jessler now looks very old and tired. He has almost aged 15 years in the course of a year.
This is probably because Mr. Jessler has to finish the orders himself. He is all alone now. He doesn't have his brother to help him. And his commitment towards the quality is also wearing him out.
The narrator orders every kind of boots in his shop this time as well. Mr. Jessler delivers them late, but when the boots arrive, the narrator is charmed by them. In shape and fit, in finish and quality, the boots are the best of Mr. Jessler's creations. The narrator immediately writes a check for Mr. Jessler and posts it. A week later, the narrator visits Mr. Jessler's shop to praise his shoes. He is disturbed to see that the nameplate saying Jessler Brothers outside the shop is gone.
A young Englishman meets him inside the shop instead and tells him that Mr. Jessler is dead. He and his associates have taken over Mr. Jessler's shop now. The narrator got shocked because he just received a wonderful pair of boots made by Mr. Jessler only a week ago.
The young Englishman tells the narrator that it is a surprise that Mr. Jessler had lived so long. He almost starved himself because of his dedication to his art. He worked hard for so long hours. He did not have any attendants or helpers because he was such a perfectionist. As a result, he took very long to complete his orders and kept losing his customers. Mr. Jessler was undoubtedly the best shoemaker in London, but he never advertised. People never got to know of him, and he lost out to the competitive market. He was stubborn about his art of shoemaking till his last breath. He never compromised with the quality of leather while making boots. He only worked with finest leather. He bought leather and paid rent with the money he made from making shoes. He had very little money left for himself. Thus we see that the young English trader who took over Mr. Jessler's shop had observed him closely. He understood his worth and admired him for the quality of his work. The narrator had tried to help Mr. Jessler in his own way, but the English trader had just waited for him to die before he could take over his shop. He had not helped Mr. Jessler sell his boots and reach out to more customers. Or perhaps he had tried to help him, but Mr. Jessler had refused help because he had too much pride and he did not trust people like the new shoe traders.
Students, with that we come to the end of the story. I hope you all enjoyed the story. We'll see you in the next English class. Till then, happy learning.